Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today we're going to be discussing some of the things that were happening in the draft in the past few years. So the Miami Dolphins this year do not have a first round pick. The first and earliest pick that they have is the 51st overall pick in the second round, and so we're going to go ahead and just take a quick look back at Miami Dolphins' previous second rounders of the past few years, just to kind of get a refresher course on what kind of luck Miami has had ever since Chris Grier has been in the office. So we're going to get into all that, kind of go into some details, look into what positions Miami might look at the second round. But before we get too far into it, just want to go ahead and mention once again that our lead sponsor for this show is You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix, the wheel repair and remanufacturing company with over 20 years of experience. They specialize in complete wheel repair, repairing wheels from curb rash, bends, and cracks. They also specialize in refinishing, polishing, machining, and custom colors that will suit your car's needs. So essentially, if you want to show your Miami Dolphins fandom and get some custom colors for your wheels, they can help you out. Lastly, U Brake Wheel Fix offers a full array of factory and custom wheel and tire applications. You can contact them at 305-748-0112 or at U Brake Wheel Fix on all social media platforms to get your wheels upgraded today. Again, if you want to get some Miami Dolphins show-offiness right there on the streets, make sure that everywhere you go, everywhere you know, you're going to be able to show off that you are a Miami Dolphins fan through and through. Go ahead and contact them at 305-748-0112 or look at all social media platforms for U Brake Wheel Fix. They'll be able to help you out. Go ahead and get started today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. Is totally up to you to decide. All you have to do is choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. So will Steph Curry shoot more than 4 3-pointers? You can choose the over on that. Do you think he's going to have an off day? You can just choose the under. It's up to you. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials to where you get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up at this point. So use the promo code FIVE, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code FIVE, F-I-V-E. Go to PrizePicks.com, sign up using that code, put in up to $100, and they will match up to $100. Basically, they will give you a free $100 to play with. Go to PrizePicks.com, get started today. All right, folks, so let's get into this draft history of the Miami Dolphins. So every time we look back at the Miami Dolphins draft history, it's always a very interesting mixed bag. So whenever you look at this, you see a lot of really popular names. You see a lot of familiar names as well. So all the way back to 2012, Chris Grier's been in the building even longer than that. But you could really start to see an influence around this time. So second round pick, Jonathan Martin in 2012. Obviously, we all know where that happened. In fact, that whole thing, you could argue, started the downward spiral of it all, because what are you going to do with Jonathan Martin? He's the victim, quote unquote, of Bullygate, or Richie Incognito was, depending on who you ask. But Ryan Tannehill as the first round pick. And then in 2013, you see Deion Jordan, Jamar Taylor, Dallas Thomas. Those were probably 3 really, really rotten rounds. You have Will Davis in there. Does anybody remember Will Davis? I still remember Will Davis. I thought he was better than he was given credit for. But things eventually started to get better as far as the quality went around 2014. So obviously Jawan James, you remember him in 2014, he was the first rounder, but the second rounder, and this was the pick that we all really like, and he's still playing today, wide receiver Jarvis Landry. He was the 63rd overall pick, and Miami was able to get, for a lack of a better term, he was a franchise player. Eventually the Dolphins decided they didn't want to pay him, and he ended up going to Cleveland, but he was a fantastic player for the Dolphins while he was here. He was definitely a fan favorite. Even now, there are still people clamoring, hey, if we have an opening at wide receiver, why don't we just bring back Jarvis Landry? I hear he's looking for work. And quite frankly, if it's a family reunion, I wouldn't mind. I sincerely doubt that Jarvis Landry would ever come back to Miami willingly, but that's a different discussion. Then you have in 2015, Jordan Phillips. So Jordan Phillips, he might end up re-signing with the Buffalo Bills soon, but he's been a solid player for them. Arguably slightly lazy, quote unquote, but he was awesome with the Dolphins. He was a 52nd overall pick. Right now, Miami Dolphins have the 51st overall pick in the second round. So just one pick later, the Miami Dolphins in 2015 were able to get someone like Jordan Phillips. So again, that was a pretty good move. 2016 gets even better. We have all-pro cornerback Xavier Howard, who was picked 38th overall. Again, that's a second-round draft pick. The Miami Dolphins were investing in this guy. 2017, Raekwon McMillan. Is he a superstar player? No, but he's a solid role player, great run stuffer. That's what he does. Mike Gesicki in 2018. So, yes, he is now a New England Patriot, but for the time that he was utilized and he actually was a fit for the offense, which for Ryan Fitzpatrick, it was just chuck up the ball and pray that Gesicki catches it, which he did most of the time. In Mike Gesicki's case, if you can just look up the stats, like things tended to go downhill for him once Tua became the quarterback, but that's because Tua's offense was predicated on timing and precision more so than just throw up a prayer like Ryan Fitzpatrick. But in 2021, with Fitzpatrick as the quarterback for the majority of the time, he caught 73 passes, 780 yards. He didn't catch that many touchdowns that year, but you can obviously tell the difference between 2021 and 2022 when Tua became the main quarterback. He was only targeted 52 times, so less than half in 1 year forward. So that's why he had having to take a 1 year deal with the New England Patriots. He wasn't utilized enough to truly get paid. So best of luck to Mike Gesicki in his new role, and we'll see if he manages to catch in a payday later down the line. 2019, things didn't go quite as well. Miami Dolphins didn't even have a second rounder that year. Instead, they went straight from Christian Wilkins in the first round with 13th overall to Michael Dieter in the third round. And the third round is something we can discuss at another time. But then we get to 2020. Okay, so 2020, this was Chris Greer's really, really big draft, right? So obviously he had to pick a quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. There's a whole, the last show that I did, I went into all of my feelings about Tua and everything surrounding Tua. Austin Jackson, Noah Igbenogany as the other two as the other two first round picks. Austin Jackson, there may still be some potential there to be at least a decent player. Like back in the day, Billy Turner, everybody thought he was trash until he wasn't. So who knows, maybe with some proper coaching, there might be something with him. Noah Igbenogany, obviously, I don't really think there's anything there with him at this point. He has one career interception to his name at this point. And so that was the one, mind you, it was the game-winning interception against the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2022, but still, that's not enough to qualify you as being anything but a draft bust. So even the worst players have their moments. So that was a mistake. But again, we're looking at the second round here. And with the second round in 2020, Chris Grier made some pretty good picks. So Robert Hunt, obviously 39th overall. He's a guard now. He could also potentially be playing tackle. We'll see where things go this season. But Robert Hunt is a fantastic player. And then Raekwon Davis, 56th overall, also in the second round. This kid can play. And I don't think we should overlook him at all. As a nose tackle, Raekwon Davis is a solid player. We just need to stay healthy. Raekwon Davis, he was another solid second-round pick for Chris Grier to put in a feather in his cap. And then 2021, Javon Holland, superstar in the making. We know this already. He's 36th overall. And then the next one, Liam Eichenberg, 42nd overall. I'll say this, Liam Eichenberg had a lot of people fooled. I know there were a lot of people that I respect. Kyle Krabs of the Draft Network, he said that Liam Eichenberg was perfect for what the Miami Dolphins were needing that year, and things didn't turn out so good. Whether it's just a lack of good coaching, whether it's a lack of clarity on what his role was supposed to be, the jury's still out on him. And as I mentioned in a previous show, Mike McDaniel himself had said that neither Austin Jackson nor Liam Eichenberg has had the opportunity yet to actually spend 2 consecutive years in the same offense, which is a fair point. We often criticize quarterbacks who end up having different offensive coordinators year in and year out. Tua was a perfect example. As soon as he got to Miami in 2020, his offensive coordinator was Chan Gailey. And obviously Chan Gailey is not necessarily somebody that we look at and say, you know what, he's an awesome fit for what Tua does. He had to come out of retirement for this. And Chan Gailey showed up in the wake of Chad O'Shea being fired. And then literally 1 year later, as we've mentioned before, Tua ends up getting the 3-headed hydra that is Eric Stoodsville, George Godsey, and Charlie Fry. Not exactly the paramount of stability. You don't look at that trio and say, you know what, this is a good team of offensive coordinators. You shouldn't have offensive coordinators. You should have one offensive coordinator and then a bunch of assistants. You shouldn't have 3 guys all fighting for the same role. Mind you, Charlie Fry was not officially an offensive coordinator, but for all intents and purposes, he was making a lot of the decisions that went into all that. So now here we go, 2022. Miami did not have a second-round pick. There was Channing Tindall in round 3, Eric Ezukanma round 4, and then Cameron Good and Skylar Thompson in round 7. And obviously Skylar Thompson ended up playing a lot more than we imagined he ever would. But where am I going with all this? If what Miami is looking for is an instant contributor, which I imagine they are, because with the picks that they're making, with the moves that they're making in the offseason, Miami is obviously very much in win now mode. And for them to be in win now mode, they're going to want somebody who can immediately contribute. Now, here's the thing when it comes to mock drafts and things like that. It's very easy to manipulate the algorithms to make it so that you can get the results you want. You just click on a certain big board, you click on a certain team needs switch, and almost instantly you can get the player that you want to fall to the Miami Dolphins at 51 pretty much every single time. So whenever I try to do these experiments, I just try to be very random. I don't even know who, because I have to use FanSpeak right now because the NFL network, the Draft Network's mock draft simulator is not currently active at the moment. But if that is the case, and I just pick a big board and I try to go with whatever the most updated one is, that's what I try to focus on. Now, a lot of talk has been about tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia as being the main target for what the Miami Dolphins are looking for in the second round. Most of the consensus is that Washington will not be available when the Miami Dolphins pick at 51. Because Darnell Washington basically has everything that you could want in a tight end. He's a big player. He knows how to block. His technique is a little sloppy, granted, but he could eventually become a really good player. He's a little bit of a project, but he could, just with his raw talent alone and his raw measurables, he could instantly become somebody who could contribute in an offense like Mike McDaniel's. Because unlike Mike Gesicki, Darnell Washington not only can catch the football, he can also be a decent blocker, and he's a willing blocker, as opposed to Mike Gesicki, who eventually he became willing to block, but he was incapable of doing it. It wasn't in him. It was not his game. It never was his game, and trying to force him to do it was what caused him to have so many struggles. Not to mention, just based on measurables alone, Mike Gesicki is listed as 6'5". Darnell Washington is listed as 6'7". This guy is massive. He could quite frankly do anything that you could ask of him. And there's no telling what his potential could be. But that's why it seems so likely that Miami won't be able to get him at the 51st overall pick. But that doesn't mean that all is lost. Again, we're going off of the assumption here that of all the positions the Miami Dolphins have a need for, the one that has the most need is tight end. And the only reason I say tight end is because, based on recent comments made by Mike McDaniel, it seems unlikely that the Dolphins are going to be focusing very heavily on the offensive line, at least early on. So, again, everybody needs to brace themselves that it might just be Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg again. But I would also, again, submit to you that maybe there is something to the things that he's saying, because you cannot, at the same time, say that Mike McDaniel is a genius who knows what he's doing, and also think that he is an idiot for saying that maybe having 2 years in a row with the same offense and not having to switch everything around might actually have an impact on their quality as players. So you can't have it both ways. He's either smart or he's dumb. You can't have it both ways. So based on that, we're going off of the idea that tight end is the position that the Miami Dolphins are going to be looking at first during the draft. And one player who seems to fall to Miami more often than not, at least, would be Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Now, I'm sure that my good friend Chad, who is from Iowa and watches a lot of Iowa football, he'd be able to tell me a lot more about him. But Laporta, back in college, very highly targeted. He catches a lot of passes. He just doesn't have anything like crazy as far as his physicality. He's not like a physical specimen at tight end. He's 6'3", 245 pounds. He can work on his blocking. Again, it's anybody who you get at this point is likely going to be a project unless you decide to go at running back. Because there are other players at running back that you could easily turn into a star right off the bat. Again, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. This time when I did my experiment, because I always try to do a new mock draft whenever I start talking about the draft, simply because I want to reset what it is that's happening. I don't want to just go off one mock draft and say, this is what I was able to get, deal with it. Because the algorithms and the big boards and the evaluations, they're always ongoing until the very day of the draft. And in this case, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama actually managed to fall to Miami. And you could easily pick him and say, out of all three running backs that the Miami Dolphins currently have, Raheem Mostert, Savon Ahmed, Jeff Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs would easily fill into that role, and he could even supplant guys like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson if he was really that good. So you're talking about instant contributor, that would be it. But if you're the Miami Dolphins, you also want to try to balance it out with some level of need. We talked about Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse. he would likely be available for the Dolphins, but there's something about him that just, I don't know, he's just another project. So if you're willing to take on projects at this point, your best bet would probably be to just stick with Austin Jackson. Because Austin Jackson, again, in rare instances, has shown that he has some level of ability to play football. And you have to give him credit for at least that much. You have to be objective about this. Because I could easily just look at Austin Jackson, and I would, honestly, because I don't have strong feelings about Austin Jackson becoming a good player. I still think that eventually, when push comes to shove, he's going to fall apart. However, I have to at least keep an open mind about this sort of thing, because if Mike McDaniel really believes that there's something there with Austin Jackson, I have to take his word for it, because I've trusted him so far and it seems to have worked out. That doesn't mean I've never criticized him. That doesn't mean I've never questioned his decisions, but I at least have to be open to the idea. And again, those 14 snaps I saw against New England, Austin Jackson looks solid. I can't ignore it. I have to look at it and look at the whole body of work. Most of his work is bad. But the fact that he had just those good ones means that there has to be something there that can be tapped into. Again, maybe Butch Berry is the one who does it. But I'm thinking if you're the Miami Dolphins, your best bet would be to go to tight end. And based on Miami Dolphins draft history in the second round, I would say that having somebody like this guy, whether it's Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, or if maybe they go with Matthew Bergeron, because again, they've had good luck in the past with their second round picks. Javon Holland, Robert Hunt, Raekwon Davis, Mike Gesicki, Raekwon McMillan, Xavier Howard, Jordan Phillips, pretty good. Jarvis Landry. They've had good luck with second-round picks in the past, at least in recent history. Because the further down you go, like let's go all the way back to 2008, 2007, the second-round picks start to fall off a little bit. But as of late, they've had really good luck with second-round picks. And I think that with Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel making the decisions, and maybe they go defense. Maybe they don't even go with offense. Maybe they go defense. Vic Fangio knows what he's looking at. I think we have a really good spot here to be able to pick a really good player. So we'll see what happens. We're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have not already checked them out yet, go to You Break Wheel Fix. They are a wheel repair and remanufacturing company with over 20 years of experience. If you need somebody to give you some custom colors for your wheels and you want to be able to show your Miami Dolphins fandom wherever you go, make sure you contact them at 305-748-0112 or at You Break Wheel Fix on all social media platforms to get your wheels upgraded today. And also make sure you go to PrizePicks.com and you can choose up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Just choose whether the player will go higher or lower on whatever their stat is. So if you're a basketball guy or if you're a baseball guy, they can give you free squares. They'll give you special Taco Tuesday promos. They give you Flex Friday specials. It's a very easy way to play fantasy football and make some money in the process. So again, go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, sign up using that code and put in up to $100. They will match up to $100, basically give you that money back so that you can play and start winning today. All right, so for the next upcoming show, it is going to be my co-host for Pulse of Fins Nation, Ron Caniff, who is going to be in charge of that particular show. I am currently on the road, so I will do as many shows as I can while I'm out. But in the meantime, Ron Caniff will have you covered for Tuesday, and we will see you all next time.